And yes, I can confirm Special Envoy Witkoff and Jared Kushner will be off to Pakistan again tomorrow morning to engage in talks, direct talks intermediated by the Pakistanis.
So Iran is back at it again with their usual unserious behavior because it appears they are now crawling back to the negotiating table. That is right. Just days after claiming they were shutting off negotiations and taking the IRGC hardline, very notably, they canceled the planned talks in Pakistan that were set to take place this Wednesday. We have the Iranian Foreign Minister Aragachi now crawling out of his hole again, showing up to Pakistan today to resume negotiations. Now, what the heck is going on here? I think it's quite obvious that nobody knows who's in charge of Iran, and that's the problem. This government is a complete mess. There's a reason why Trump basically said you have to get your act together and figure out who's even in charge before you can negotiate, because clearly we've seen this story play out time and time again. The political wing of the government, the president, the foreign minister say one thing, they sound like they want to make a deal. The IRGC then condemns them, basically threatens them and pulls them back. Then they send them out to do it again. On some level, you could argue that Iran is just buying time and wasting time. That is absolutely true. On the other hand, I think there's a strong case to be made. Well, maybe nobody really knows who's in charge of the Iranian government. We've long been speculating that there really are two regimes. They're fighting each other. There's a very obvious power struggle going on. Who knows whether Aragachi showing up to Pakistan is an intentional middle finger to the IRGC. And amidst all of it, we have still continued to wonder where exactly the supreme leader is. Is he dead? Is he comatose? Well, we do have some updates on that here today because allegedly Iranian officials have leaked to Western media that, this is his current state. He's disfigured. He's basically missing a face. Some sources out of Israel and the Iranian opposition are going so far as to say he might be dead. We said weeks ago, it's pretty notable. We've never seen this guy actually appear in public. He's basically just issued statements. It's like having a fake cardboard box or one of those anonymous computers effectively running the country. It's ridiculous. And also, this is part of the problem is, so legally, the Iranian supreme leader is supposed to sign off on any deal, yet Iranian negotiators are showing up to the negotiations with America without any access to the supreme leader or the people we're negotiating with right now in Pakistan even having the authority to make a deal. I'm not exactly sure. So, on one hand, I like to say, oh, look at Iran, haha, they're caving to the pressure, they're crawling back to the table. And on a level, that is true. I do certainly think that the economic effects of this blockade are inevitably going to force Iran into something. At the same time, you can't fully say that when it's just clear the Iranian government's in complete shambles right now and nobody knows what the heck is happening. Nonetheless, it is still an argument, I guess, against the people who have claimed that, oh, the Iranian regime stood tall, right? How many times did we hear this throughout the conflict? Look, they appointed a new supreme leader, so therefore that means that we didn't affect regime change. Oh, wait a minute. Look at this supposedly genius country that's fighting the Epstein Empire or something. They totally have their act together. They're the martyrs. They're the heroes. They don't even know they don't even know who's in charge of their country right now. So nonetheless, let's bring you this full coverage. Again, some updates or lack thereof on the Iran negotiations. I don't even know what to call this, but we'll put it all together for you. First, though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. That is the best way to support our work, and it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. That said, you see the reporting here today from Al Jazeera. Apparently, the Iranian foreign minister, Aragachi, is expected to fly into Pakistan's capital on Friday with a small delegation, in what officials said was a key step toward the resumption of direct talks with the United States aimed at ending their war. Now, you may remember that the IRGC just said days ago that they would not return to negotiations unless America lifted the naval blockade. You probably tell, but America has not lifted that blockade, and yet they're coming back anyway. Although this really does follow the rather predictable cycle that we've seen with Iranian negotiations thus far, and why every time that Iran backtracks on something or tries to do a show of force or a saving of face, I've encouraged people not to panic, because you notice this is what they do, right? We'll have this big progress and it'll seem like a political victory for Trump. Oh, we're headed towards a deal. And then the IRGC just blows it up and says, no, that's not happening. And then people freak out. Oh, Trump has failed. Trump has lost. America has been defeated. That's not really how this stuff goes, right? How it really goes is that, it takes time, I guess, for the different heads of the Iranian government to actually confirm what they're doing. a fundamentally unserious government, frankly, I think you could say. But senior government officials in Islamabad have confirmed this development. And by the way, we see them here today, indeed, making that arrival. Take a listen.
Pakistani government who have now welcomed Abbas Araghchi, the foreign minister of the Islamic Republic, and a small team. Now, the IRGC confirmed earlier today that Ghalibaf, the so-called Speaker of Parliament, has indeed resigned. But the reality is that they forced him to resign. He did. Abbas Araghchi, as the puppet of the IRGC, has been sent with no authority whatsoever to Pakistan. But the Supreme Leader has apparently forbidden negotiations with the United States under current conditions. See, there's always a caveat. Under current conditions. Tomorrow they're going to wake up, realize that they have to talk, and they're going to say, oh, we just checked the weather. The conditions are better today. So there is currently a ban on talking with the Americans. While Abbas Araghchi has gone to Pakistan, he's on a tour. Officially, he's on a tour.
Yeah, so as 2ZTV points out there, this is a complete mess because they've now sent the foreign minister guy, Araghchi, who was leading the negotiations, back to Pakistan with no real authority. They fired Ghalibaf, the guy who was the House Speaker, also on the negotiating team. They took him off. They're keeping Araghchi on to pretend like the political wing of the government is still in charge. And yet, according to the supposed quote-unquote supreme leader, the cardboard box that we haven't actually seen, we don't know if he exists, but that really means the IRGC, right? When they're handing these supposed statements from the supreme leader down, we know who they're really coming from. So the supreme leader, aka the IRGC, has publicly come out and claimed that negotiations are banned with the United States until current conditions improve, which really means the naval blockade is lifted. And yet they're still sending Araghchi to Pakistan, claiming it's not negotiations, even though obviously there's a reason why he's going to Pakistan. This is not some random arbitrary foreign tour. If he was just going on a state visit, he probably wouldn't pick Pakistan of all countries to start. Obviously, this is mediation and negotiating going on, but they're not claiming that is because the IRGC wants to make it look like, oh, we're standing hardline. We're not talking to the United States, even though we're basically showing up to Pakistan to do exactly that. So yeah, once again, what you're watching is a lot of unserious behavior from these people. It's frankly ridiculous. It's rather childish, but still, ultimately, deep down, I would predict, and as we've been saying, either one of two things happens. If the IRGC wants to go full hardline, seize control of the country, then their economy, and by the way, their government's not going to survive the economic effects of this naval blockade, right? The IRGC is probably the least popular branch of the government with the people. They try to push too hard while the people just literally start starving. That's not going to end well for them. Or likewise, at the end of the day, right? And the Iranians love to do this. After they beat their chest, after they act so tough, after they save face and make it look like they won, secretly, they're still going to go and cut a deal with the United States, which you could argue is sort of what Araghchi is doing right now in Pakistan. They're going to claim we're not negotiating with America, but we just showed up there at the same time that Steve Witkoff is there, but we totally didn't talk to each other. I mean, come on. Seriously, right? I think that's frankly what you're watching, but, we'll see. Honestly, I'm not making a strong prediction in this case because we've just seen time and time again. These Iranians, they flip-flop. They can't decide what they want. They don't know who's really in charge. So if I were Trump, I would basically not really return to the table in a serious manner until either they figure out who's in charge or just keep up the economic pressure from this blockade so that way they're forced into a deal, which really you could argue is already starting to happen. But, just keep that up. Until they want to act like serious people, until they want to act not like children who are, pretending, mommy, aka the supreme leader said you have to do this, and like they just didn't say that, then what's the point of talking to these people? Nonetheless, as it pertains to the supreme leader, this person who's allegedly in charge, even though we haven't heard of him, some interesting news coming out this week because, we've heard these rumors for several weeks now, but according to now Western media, the Iranian supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei's face is so disfigured that he'll need plastic surgery. Apparently, this is allegedly what Iranian officials had told the New York Times. Now, if we're to believe that is true, and this is kind of like insider information that was leaked or something like that, then I think you'd also have to assume the Iranian officials may very likely be downplaying the severity of his medical condition. I do think it's well obvious at this point Something's going on with the supreme leader. Who knows if he's alive or not, but let me just say there's likely a reason why we haven't seen his face. We haven't heard from him. Early on in the conflict, you could have tried to make the argument, well, they're trying to keep his security a secret or something. Okay, well, we're now in a ceasefire, so there's no reason why we shouldn't have heard from him thus far. And we heard the initial reports that maybe he was dead. He was actually wiped out by the airstrikes. We heard he was in a coma. He's facing severe injuries. Now, the current reporting is that he reportedly has been cut off from his own commanders, which is completely believable. I do believe the IRGC is like writing statements on his behalf that are not real. But he might have to get a facelift, is severely burnt, and is missing a leg. So he is extremely disfigured here. Although, I mean, let's just use our logic here for a minute. Not that I'm a medical expert, but if you face injuries that traumatic, don't you think it's also logical? Let me just throw this out here. He could also have brain damage. Who knows if he's comatose or fully all there, but I would also speculate. I'm not sure he's even at all in a decision-making capacity. Not sure. I could be wrong about that, but clearly something's going on here, and I think it's very obvious he's not actually in charge of the country, okay? Whether he's alive, whether he's dead, whatever it is, right? As I said earlier in the video, Israeli and Iranian opposition sources are claiming he's actually dead and the IRGC is covering it up. That's possible as well. I don't think it's a stretch to say if the Iranian officials are now quietly, allegedly admitting to Western media that, hey, he's not in such a good state, it's probably a little bit worse even than they're saying. So if the news out there is he's missing a face, he's severely burnt, he's missing a leg, is he actually alive? Let's be honest about that. I'm not exactly sure. And as I said even weeks ago, the IRGC can pretend to rule the country with a fake supreme leader for a couple months or something, but going back to this idea that the Iranian regime actually is facing regime change right now, and it's not going to last very long, especially under this blockade. I mean, how long can you really keep the facade up of a supreme leader that doesn't really exist? You would think eventually somehow that's going to have to come out or people start to ask questions. I'm not exactly sure, but Israeli news is claiming that IRGC generals have reportedly completed a quiet military coup in Tehran, which looks like what happened this week, sidelining the religious and political establishment entirely from state leadership. And by the way, that is concerning, right? However, at the same time, you wonder why are they sending Aragachi to Pakistan or whatever. I think as this post points out, and this really reflects what we've been saying, this is Iran's core dilemma right now. Both choices that they have threaten the regime. Option one is, maybe listen to Aragachi, listen to the political wing, is take the deal, right? The economy needs it. The blockade is biting. The rial is collapsing. Shortages are growing. Salaries are being delayed. They're going to face a collapse here if they don't take the deal. But giving up the nuclear file also means losing deterrence and weakening support from the IRGC hardliners. By the way, it would also just look like, we cave to the United States. But option two is, of course, to refuse the deal. They can keep ideological support and hardliner backing, but the economy keeps sinking. Within 3 months, losses near the full $56 billion annual budget, unrest could spiral beyond control. Because let's not forget, we literally just watched back in January protests break out that were partially driven by economic anxieties. People are not happy with the current state of the country. So that's already sort of an established thing. There won't be an active hot war going on to rally the country around, and you keep losing millions of dollars a day. The economic effects of that will be real. It doesn't seem to me like either option the Iranians have, whether they want to take the IRGC route of wait this out or they want to return back to the negotiating tables out of necessity, really is all that good of an option, right?
And the point of this is the economic leverage that we maintain over Iran now. While there's a ceasefire with respect to the military and kinetic strikes, Operation Economic Fury continues, and the crux of that is this naval blockade. We are choking their economy. We are strangling their main source of revenue. They can't pay their own people. They're losing $500 million every single day. Karg Island is completely full of oil because they can't transport it to and from. So the president, the cards are in his hands. The United States maintains control over the situation. He has all of the leverage. And again, that's why he's maintained a little bit of flexibility with the extension of the ceasefire as we await a unified response from the Iranians to the president's very clear proposal.
And see, that's exactly the thing, is whether the IRGC wants it or not, this could ultimately be what forces the Iranians back to the negotiating table in the end, is the economic effect. no amount of jihad or ideology or revolution can actually ignore the fact the country just logistically cannot survive more than a couple of months under a U.S. naval blockade. It is very much within their incentive. They sort of need to make a deal if they want to survive. Now, maybe they don't. Maybe the IRGC wants to do the Muslim suicide and just like go down with the ship. But assuming there's any sense of self-preservation at all, I'm not exactly sure how long this strategy can last. Although, who knows? Maybe you're already starting to see that. Maybe you're already starting to see them quietly while just publicly claiming to be defiant and trying to drag it out as long as possible so that way they can look strong or pretend as if they have some type of leverage, even though we've all established these are just unserious people playing games. That maybe the reason they're sending Aragachi back and they didn't fire the whole negotiating team, or they're kind of still secretly negotiating at the moment while saving face and claiming that they aren't, is because of this ultimate realization. I don't know. All I do know, though, is under this blockade, it still remains true. America has the cards, and Iran can just figure out which option they want to take. I mean, sure, if they refuse to make a deal, if they keep the strait closed on both sides, that will have bad economic effects on America and the West. I mean, that's undeniable, but it's not nearly the economic effects that it's going to have on Iran, right? So they can leverage, oh, the Democrats might win the midterms or something, but you know, if Trump commits to the idea, I'm caring more about my legacy than the midterms, there's nothing Iran can do in that position, right? It's not about losing a midterm election in Iran. It's about our whole regime's going to be drug out by our own people in our streets, if you know what I'm saying. So I don't know. I mean, we'll see what happens. I don't know if I even want to make a prediction at this point in terms of what Iran's going to do. All I just see is either they have to take the deal or they're going to collapse. I guess in that sense, that is my prediction, because the cards are just not there. The economics, the finances, the math here don't actually make sense for Iran. It honestly probably was not all that smart for the IRGC to blow up the negotiations right as it seemed like we were about to reach a deal just last week, right? And who knows, maybe they've done this full coup, they're really in charge or something, but even who knows if they come to the same realization that the political branch or even the religious branch of the government did. Oh, we kind of have to make a deal for economic and financial reasons. This is very clear. We don't have the cards, we don't have the leverage. You don't say, but who knows? We'll see what they do. Let me know your thoughts about that in the comment section down below. But for now, that is the current update. Iran is up to their usual unserious behavior. Empty threats, empty negotiations at the same time. These people, it's just so typical. But anyways, that said, let me know your thoughts. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new. And until next time, God bless and peace.